What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. I want to tell you guys an interesting story, or actually let you hear an interesting story here. It's about Russia and, well, their quest to take over the world, you might say. And it might be something you don't know. And you might be saying, well, Jimmy, I think I know a lot here. And this goes back to right after Social Security started back in 1935 and when World War II just started back in 1939. So it's not that far away. In fact, some people are still alive here today. And this goes back to when Russia wanted to take over other countries, country after country. And you might say, well, Jimmy, they're doing that now. Ukraine, Crimea. But this is not a story about today. And you might be saying, have they done this before? And the answer might be a little bit startling because if you actually, I was actually a little bit stunned about this because I may have heard this before, but I may have not. And then you got to kind of wonder here how long the regime in Russia has been doing this. As my wife said, this kind of goes that there's a pattern here and has been for quite a while. So take a listen to here Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and what has happened here in Finland and what the decision of the Finns have what they've made them do. So take a listen here and let me know your thoughts.
To all of the distinguished guests, 2 months ago, I stood with our allies in Brussels as Finland's flag was raised over NATO headquarters for the first time. President Niinisto declared, and I quote, "The era of military non-alignment in Finland has come to an end. A new era begins." It was a sea change that would have been unthinkable a little more than a year earlier. Before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, 1 in 4 Finns supported the country joining NATO. After the full-scale invasion, 3 in 4 Finns supported joining. It wasn't hard for Finns to imagine themselves in the Ukrainian shoes. They'd walked in them in November 1939 when the Soviet Union invaded Finland. Like President Putin's so-called special operation against Ukraine, the USSR's so-called liberation operation falsely accused Finland of provoking the invasion. Like the Russians with Kyiv, the Soviets were confident that they'd sack Helsinki in weeks. So confident that they had Dmitry Shostakovich compose music for the victory parade before the Winter War even started. Like Putin in Ukraine, when Stalin failed to overcome the Finns' fierce and determined resistance, he shifted to a strategy of terror, incinerating entire villages and bombing so many hospitals from the air that Finns started covering up the Red Cross insignia on their rooftops. Like the millions of Ukrainian refugees today, hundreds of thousands of Finns were driven from their homes by the Soviet invasion. They included 2 children, Pirkko and Henry, whose families evacuated their homes in Karelia, the mother and father of our host, the mayor of the city. To many Finns, the parallels between 1939 and 2022 were striking. They were visceral, and they were not wrong. Finns understood that if Russia violated the core principles of the UN Charter, sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence, if they did that in Ukraine, it will imperil their own peace and security as well. We understood that too. That's why, over the course of 2021, as Russia ratcheted up its threats against Kyiv and amassed more and more troops, tanks, and planes on Ukraine's borders, we made every effort to get Moscow to de-escalate its manufactured crisis and resolve its issues through diplomacy. President Biden told President Putin that we were prepared to discuss our mutual security concerns, a message that I reaffirmed repeatedly, including in person with Foreign Minister Lavrov. We offered written proposals to reduce tensions. Together with our allies and partners, we used every forum to try to prevent war. from the NATO-Russia Council to the OSCE, from the UN to our direct channels. Across these engagements, we set out two possible paths for Moscow. A path of diplomacy, which could lead to greater security for Ukraine, for Russia, for all of Europe. Or a path of aggression, which would result in severe consequences for the Russian government. President Biden made clear that regardless of which path President Putin chose, we would be ready. And if Russia chose war, we would do three things: support Ukraine, impose severe costs on Russia, and strengthen NATO, while rallying our allies and partners around these goals. As the storm clouds gathered, we surged military, economic, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. First in August 2021, and again in December, we sent military equipment to bolster Ukraine's defenses, including Javelins and Stingers. And we deployed a team from the U.S. Cyber Command to help Ukraine shore up its power grid and other critical infrastructure against cyber attacks. We prepared an unprecedented set of sanctions, export controls, other economic costs to impose severe and immediate consequences on Russia in the event of a full-scale invasion. We took steps to leave no doubt that we and our allies would uphold our commitment to defend every inch of NATO territory. And we worked relentlessly to rally allies and partners around helping Ukraine defend itself and denying Putin his strategic aims. Since day one of his administration, President Biden has focused on rebuilding and revitalizing America's alliances and partnerships, knowing that we're stronger when we work alongside those who share our interests and our values. In the run-up to Russia's invasion, we demonstrated the power of those partnerships, coordinating our planning and strategy for a potential invasion with NATO, with the EU, with the G7, and other allies and partners from around the world. Over those faithful weeks in January and February of 2022, it became clear that no amount of diplomatic effort was going to change President Putin's mind. He would choose war. And so, on February 17, 2022, I went before the United Nations Security Council to warn the world that Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine was imminent. I set out the steps that Russia would take. First, manufacturing a pretext, and then using missiles, tanks, troops, cyber attacks to strike pre-identified targets, including Kyiv, with the aim of toppling Ukraine's democratically elected government and erasing Ukraine from the map as an independent country. We hoped to be proven wrong. Unfortunately, we were right. A week after my warning to the Security Council, President Putin invaded. Ukrainians of all walks of life, soldiers and citizens, men and women, young and old, bravely defended their nation. And the United States moved swiftly, decisively, and in unison with allies and partners to do exactly what we said we'd do: support Ukraine, impose costs on Russia, strengthen NATO, all of this with our allies and partners.
Well, Russia didn't win that one because Finland's still here. Finland's still an independent country. And now it's seen the writing on the wall as Putin has actually threatened Finland and Sweden just months ago. And that was enough cause for Finland and Sweden to go and apply to join NATO. And Finland, having remember what happened in the past, they said, you know what? We're going to go ahead and not remain neutral like they had for so many years and join NATO. Finland is now officially in NATO. Sweden is in the process of joining NATO because, well, once you're in NATO, you're in with 30 other countries, including the United States. And Putin knows that that's pretty much the line that he can't win unless they want to literally do a nuclear war, nuke versus nuke, with which there will be no winners. If he's desperate enough to do that, he's literally just a complete madman. Let's hope it doesn't come to that because there will be no winners. Now, don't get me wrong. There's not going to be any winners in the Ukraine war, but it's interesting that the choice that Secretary Blinken laid out there, because the choice that they laid out for Russia before this happened, and I still remember talking about that on my channel, and all the people that said, "Oh, yeah, you know what? Russia's not going to invade. This is just fear mongering or war mongering." And I just remember just being a realist, thinking, you know what? Russia is putting thousands of troops, and they're literally moving thousands of troops by the day to the border, and so like all of a sudden I remember saying there's 100,000 troops on the border, and they're still moving more and more and more troops on the border. It's just like, why would they be doing that if they don't plan to invade? I'm just like, sure, it could be possible, but it surely doesn't look that way. And here we are, over a year, getting near the year and a half point, with no end in sight. Now, the problem is that they want Ukraine's land, because if they don't come out with land, then all this is for naught. And you look at the two choices that they had here, and they've lost over 100,000 men. They've lost billions and billions of dollars. Literally, most of Europe doesn't buy oil from them. Not all, but almost all US companies have pulled out of Russia. Massive, massive other countries from companies from other countries have pulled out. I mean, Visa, MasterCard, American Express have pulled out of Russia. McDonald's, Nike. I mean, we're talking about major, major brands, worldwide brands that might not ever do business in Russia ever again. I mean, they have literally gone back decades, and they're losing billions of dollars just from that alone. Imagine you can't go to Russia and use a credit card. I mean, think of the economic toll that they're taking. I mean, Europe doesn't buy oil from them. The United States doesn't buy oil from them. Think of the economic toll that they're taking, all because they chose war when they could have just not. They could have just not. And really, think about this, their choice was literally, we're going to go and try to force take this country because we would rather try to take their land, take their people, and take their resources. And they were warned about this ahead of time. Don't do it. Because they seen the success they had by taking Crimea, but they've also seen that they didn't have success in the past with things like Finland. So, yeah, this just shows a pattern. They've done this in the past. You guys can let me know your thoughts here in the comments, but I found that a very interesting story that I bet a lot of people here didn't know about. And it's pretty shocking when you kind of put history back together. History does seem to repeat itself in a lot of ways here. And remember, we've also seen plans from Russia that they plan to take over Moldova. They've leaked those plans. They plan to put Belarus in as part of Russia. I mean, we already know that kind of here. And it's literally just one by one by one, they want to take over or put in countries as part of Russia one way or another. So you can let me know your thoughts here in the comments, but basically they're saying if you don't become part of Russia, we're going to try to take them over militarily. But this has taken a huge toll on them. They've lost a vast amount of their military. And largely, the U.S. has not had to put a single boot on the ground there. All they've had to do is really help support the defending country that's just defending their land, and along with the other countries in Europe that have helped as well. So let me know your thoughts here in the comments. I'll keep you up to date here. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe down below. Click the bell icon so you don't miss out on any new videos here that come out here on our YouTube channel every day. Thanks for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out our YouTube channel and get the word out to new people here. Here's some videos you should watch next. Congress just passed 2 bills, and President Biden is going to veto one of them. You might not know about that here. You can click that here in this video. Here is my newest video next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.